Welcome to another episode in our video series about how to paint basics. Today we're talking about thinning your paints. Why do we even do this? What effect does it have? To explain this, I'm going to be comparing three different types of paint from Games Workshop. Firstly, we have Null Oil Shade, then Black Templar Contrast Paint, and finally Abaddon Black Base Paint. These are actually all just black paint at different levels of dilution. Let's take a closer look. Firstly, we have the Abaddon Black Base Paint. As you can see, it's rather thick and high in pigment, which makes it opaque in colour. We would usually use this for undercoating miniatures in a block colour. Games Workshop actually has a video showing what happens if you don't thin this paint and you use it fresh out of the pot. As you can see, the paint is really thick and you can see the brush marks all over the miniature. And then after it dries, it will have a super lumpy finish that ruins all the details on the model. Next though, we have Games Workshop's contrast paint. As you can see, this paint is a lot more diluted. This is in fact the kind of consistency that you would usually want to be painting your miniatures with. Using their video as an example again, we can see it covers evenly, but it also shows some of the grey undercoat behind the red colour. This is because the paint is somewhat transparent. So after we leave it to dry, we can then go back over it in a second layer to make it a solid red colour. The difference being that it leaves a smooth finish to the model, even though we have to paint the same area twice, which I know many people find to be annoying. Lastly, we have Null Oil Shade paint, which you can see is a very diluted black paint. It almost looks like a coloured water. It provides a slight black glaze of colour, and it is often used to wash miniatures and bring back areas of detail that were otherwise lost when applying blocks of colour to a miniature. Using another one of Games Workshop's videos for an example, we can see Null Oil is being used on a block of metal colour to bring back the details of the miniature, because the wash will sink into all the little details and dry within its recesses, and it will also reduce the overall shininess of the metallic paint, giving the miniature more contrast and definition. Now let's talk about thinning your paints, because all this black paint is just made up of two components really, the pigments and the medium. The pigment gives the paint its colour and the medium gives the paint its consistency. Now you may be wondering why we don't just add water to the paint. It's actually because water doesn't actually mix very well with paint. It will result in an uneven coverage on the miniature, like trying to mix oil and water together. It just doesn't work very well. Now you can use water, but most professional painters will use something called paint medium. You can actually buy pure paint medium like this airbrush paint thinner from Vallejo, or sometimes it's called glaze medium as well. They effectively both do the same thing. If we use this on the thick black paint called Abaddon Black though, you can see that it can be thinned down to whatever consistency you want it to be. Now you can see it's very similar in consistency to the contrast paint. So really you could just buy one pot of black Abaddon paint and a bottle of paint medium, and then you could mix both together in different variations to achieve the desired effects you're looking for. Or one can buy these pre-mixed paint pots like the contrast paint or the shade oil to save yourself some time, and just having a consistent batch of paint mixed up the same every time is quite helpful, I suppose. But essentially they're all just different concentrations of paint. When I paint my own miniatures, I actually use an undercoating technique called grayscaling. This just means I paint the miniature black and white according to the light source coming from above. This gives the miniature a really contrasty, natural lit look that looks very realistic, especially when you're looking at a miniature on a tabletop from a distance. But the glorious thing about this technique is that if you use thinned paints on your miniature, you can add colour while leaving the areas of light and dark on your miniature. This gives you a very natural look to your miniatures that's a lot harder to achieve with highlighting and other painting techniques. So I do recommend trying this yourself. I've actually already done a tutorial video on how to achieve grayscale base coating on miniatures by using a spray can. That I will link below if you want to try it for yourself. But if you found today's video helpful at all, I'd appreciate if you leave a like. And also, if you really liked today's video and you liked these tutorials, why not subscribe and press the bell icon? And then YouTube will flamboozle you every time I upload a video. How about that? How about that indeed? Have a fantastic day, my friends.